Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. This Saturday is UFC 289, Amanda Nunes versus Irene Aldana. And in the co-main event, we have an amazing lightweight matchup, Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. And this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for this fight. I've already done a UFC 289 full card prediction video. I will link that down in the description if you want to go check out that video. I do a prediction for every single fight on the card. But this is going to be a more in-depth prediction video for Oliveira versus Dariush, which I cannot wait to see. This is the true people's main event of UFC 289. Without this fight, UFC 289 is dead on arrival. It's a glorified fight night card without Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. And it's just such a compelling matchup because you have Beneil Dariush, who's on this long winning streak, 8-fight winning streak, surging contender, arguably already deserves a title shot. And then you have Charles Oliveira, who was coming off an 11-fight winning streak. He was the champion. He loses to Islam Makhachev. And now he gets Beneil Dariush in his rebound fight. And this was originally supposed to happen last month at UFC 288. Charles Oliveira had to pull out with an undisclosed injury. It got moved back a month to UFC 289. I honestly think maybe the UFC was thinking UFC 289 isn't looking that good. Let's just move it over to UFC 289 and we'll claim undisclosed injury. But nonetheless, this is a great match. Both guys are the elite of the elite. Both guys are super well-rounded. And when has Charles Oliveira ever been in a boring fight? Seriously, Charles Oliveira is one of the most exciting fighters, if not the most exciting fighter on the UFC roster. Every single one of his recent fights were exciting. I know the Islam Makhachev fight didn't last that long, and Makhachev kind of controlled the majority of it. But the streak before that was incredible for Charles Oliveira. Probably the best title run I've ever seen. And then you have Beneil Dariush, who arguably already deserves a title shot. Most people want to see him against Islam Makhachev next. He kind of had to bite the bullet and fight Mateusz Gamrot in his last fight, which we'll talk about in a second. And a lot of people thought, okay, is he going to lose to Gamrot and then he's never going to get his title shot? And he went out there and put on a world-class performance against Mateusz Gamrot. A lot of people thought, okay, now it's time for Dariush's title shot. Well, he's got to fight one more person, and that's former champion Charles Oliveira. And for Charles Oliveira, this is must-win because think about that. To go on an 11-fight win streak, then lose your title to Islam Makhachev, and now if he loses to Beneil Dariush, it's not like he's going to get cut. It's not like he's not going to be around anymore, but that's going to be a massive setback for Charles Oliveira, and I just don't know where he goes from there. So if you look at the tail of the tape for this fight, you have Charles Oliveira, who's 33-9, Beneil Dariush, who's 22-4-1. Oliveira ranked number 1, Dariush ranked number 4. Oliveira 33 years old, Dariush 34. They're both 5'10". Oliveira has a 74-inch reach, and Dariush has a 72-inch reach. So a 2-inch reach advantage for Charles Oliveira. So if you look at Beneil Dariush, 22 wins, 5 by knockout, 8 by submission, 9 by decision. Of his 4 losses, 3 by knockout, 1 by submission. He comes into this fight on an 8-fight winning streak. His last fight was at UFC 280 against Mateusz Gamrot. A lot of people thought he was going to lose this fight. I picked against him in this fight. Originally, my early prediction, I was leaning Dariush, and then the closer we got to the fight and I did a little bit more research, I thought Gamrot would be able to get it done. And Dariush went out there. The scrambles in this fight, the defensive wrestling that Dariush showed in this fight makes me want to see Beneil Dariush versus Islam Makhachev. And, if Dariush wins this fight, there's no denying him for a title shot. If he beats Charles Oliveira, there's no denying him for a title shot now. I thought he arguably deserved a title shot after beating Gamrot, but he looked phenomenal in the Gamrot fight. He was stuffing the takedowns. When he did get taken down, he would immediately scramble out of it. He was so hard to control in that fight. He dropped Gamrot in the second or third round, and he just looked so good in this fight. The fight before that, he beat up Tony Ferguson at UFC 262. Just pressured forward, took him down, out-grappled him, had a knee bar at one point in time, but couldn't finish it. The fight before that, he fought Carlos Diego Ferreira. This is back in February of 2021, so it's really not that long ago. It's about 2 years ago. And this was actually a close fight. The first round was Beneil Dariush, hurt him with a knee, but Dariush ate a few shots in this fight. And then the second and third were very competitive. In the third round, I thought Carlos Diego Ferreira won. Second round, honestly, was close. I thought Dariush took it, and it was a split decision win for Dariush. But this was a much closer fight than I really remembered when I went back and watched it. Fight before that, he KO'd Scott Holtzman. Fight before that, he KO'd Drakkar Klose. Drakkar Klose had Beneil Dariush on the ropes, almost ended this streak, hurt him badly, got over aggressive. Beneil Dariush just lands some nasty combinations and eventually sleeps Drakkar Klose. And then I want to go back to his last loss. His last loss was in March of 2018 against Alexander Hernandez. And Alexander Hernandez came out, threw a front kick, just started pressuring Beneil Dariush like crazy, landed combinations, KO'd Beneil Dariush. One thing I want to mention about this fight is Joe Rogan was talking about Alexander Hernandez is dirty because he faked a glove touch and then threw a front kick. I watched it. I didn't even see that in real time. And then I went back and rewatched it. I still didn't see it. Then I watched it in slow-mo. It did not exist. It was the stance that he was in. And I just hated the commentary, so I wanted to mention it in this video. And then you go out to Beneil Dariush's last loss before this. It was against Edson Barboza, competitive fight. That fade-away flying knee from Edson Barboza KO'd Beneil Dariush. And, you know, if you look at all Beneil Dariush's losses, all of them are via finish. 3 via KO or TKO, and he got submitted by Michael Chiesa back in 2016. But that's 7 years ago, and Beneil Dariush has been rapidly improving over the years. But I just wanted to mention, when Beneil Dariush loses, he's getting finished. So if you look at Charles Oliveira, 33 pro MMA fights, 9 wins by knockout, 21 by submission, 3 by decision. Of his 9 losses, 4 by knockout, 4 by submission, and 1 by decision. His last fight was at UFC 280 against Islam Makhachev, where, honestly, my memory of this fight was far different from when I went back and rewatched it recently. And I know Islam Makhachev won the majority of this fight, won all of this fight, but it was more competitive than I thought, you know. There were some good exchanges. There were some good clinch exchanges. Makhachev got him down in the first round. Oliveira was able to scramble back to his feet. And then in the second round, he just gets clipped early, basically, or midway through the round, and gets submitted. Islam Makhachev follows him to the ground and submits him. But Islam Makhachev, look how good he's looked, and look at the long winning streak he was on. And Makhachev, we knew it going in. He's not going to be scared to follow Charles Oliveira to the ground. And he takes the lightweight belt off of Charles Oliveira. I know not technically, because it was for the vacant belt because of the weight miss against Justin Gaethje. But he took the belt. He ended the title reign of Charles Oliveira. The fight before that was at UFC 274 against Justin Gaethje. He was defending his lightweight title. He missed weight. There was something going on with the scale there, so he barely missed weight by like 0.5 of a pound. They stripped him of the belt as soon as the fight started. But the fight was crazy while it lasted. It only lasted 1 round. Oliveira got hurt a couple times by Justin Gaethje, but eventually Oliveira hurts him, jumps on the rear naked choke. The fight before that against Dustin Poirier, very good fight. Got hurt by Dustin Poirier a couple times. Landed some good shots on Dustin Poirier. Then Dustin Poirier overreaches with like a right hook. I can't remember exactly what it was. And Charles Oliveira jumps on his back, gets the back position, and finds the rear naked choke. Then the fight before that was when Charles Oliveira fought for the vacant lightweight title after Khabib Nurmagomedov retired. And this fight against Michael Chandler, I can't talk about it enough. It only lasted 1 round and then 19 seconds of the second round. This was one of the most exciting, basically 1-round fights, or, you know, 1.1 round fights basically, that I have ever seen. For it to be such a short fight and to be that amazing. I mean, there were so many momentum swings. He gets hurt badly in the first round. Then he gets on Chandler's back. Then Chandler somehow scrambles out of that, hurts him again, almost finishes him. Chandler was this close to finishing Oliveira in the first round. Oliveira was on all fours, just kind of bobbing and weaving and just barely surviving. Then he comes out in the second round, lands a left hook, hurts Chandler badly, just tracks him down, spamming left hooks, TKOs Michael Chandler in the second round to win the undisputed lightweight title. And then you go back before that, he beat Tony Ferguson at UFC 256. This was when Tony Ferguson was just coming off the loss to Justin Gaethje. A lot of people still consider Tony Ferguson one of the best in the world. And a lot of people were picking Tony Ferguson going in this fight. I've always been a Charles Oliveira believer. I picked Charles Oliveira to beat Tony Ferguson. Went out there, out-grappled him, almost got him in an armbar. That's one thing him and Beneil Dariush have in common. They almost submitted Tony Ferguson, but Tony Ferguson rather have a limb ripped off than get submitted. And this was kind of Charles Oliveira's coming out party. I feel like a lot of people didn't really give him the respect he deserved until he beat Tony Ferguson. But that's getting all the way back to 2020. But you go back on this win streak, he beat Kevin Lee, Jarrett Gordon, Nick Lenz. But what's crazy is, as young as Charles Oliveira is, he's been in the UFC since 2010. That is crazy. For 13 years. And you go back to his last loss before Islam Makhachev, Frank Yeager. He lost via unanimous decision. You go back to UFC 152. He got KO'd by Cub Swanson. You go back to August of 2011, he got TKO'd by Donald Cerrone. And a lot of people used to bring up those losses when comparing him to Khabib. It was so early on in his career. He was fighting top competition at a very young age. And then once he really started to improve and he really started to refine his skill set and he started to hit his prime, he went on this tear. He went on this 11-fight win streak, culminating with winning the title against Michael Chandler and then defending the title multiple times. It was craziness. And Oliveira, what's always made me a believer in Charles Oliveira is that he constantly improves from fight to fight. And I'm curious how he's going to rebound from a loss, because the first time he's tasted loss in 5 years. That's craziness to be undefeated for 5 years and, win a championship, defend it a couple times. And now, after losing to Islam Makhachev, this is no easy rebound fight against Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush is so tough, so durable, so well-rounded, has great kicks. And when I look at this fight, honestly, I feel like a lot of people are counting Charles Oliveira out. I feel like the majority of people think Beneil Dariush wins this fight. And I was flipping and flopping back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I really think this is a very tough fight to pick. But as I kind of did my deep dive and I researched this fight and I watched a lot of the recent fights between these two, I feel like the picks started to get easier and easier and easier. And then I was still kind of questioning myself. But for my official prediction, I am going Charles Oliveira, second round rear naked choke. Because what I saw for Beneil Dariush, okay, he fights very well when he's moving forward. He doesn't fight the greatest when he's backing up. And Charles Oliveira has the takedown defense, has the grappling to defend the takedowns of Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush, very good wrestler, very good defensive wrestler, not the greatest offensive wrestler by any means. I mean, he outgrappled Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson has horrible takedown defense. I don't think Beneil Dariush can go out there and just offensively wrestle and beat Charles Oliveira. I don't think he can go out there, take Charles Oliveira down, control him on the ground, and win a decision that way. And I think a lot of Beneil Dariush's entries are very sloppy, and he ends up in the clinch, and he presses the fighter against the cage. Then he starts looking for single, double legs. Oliveira, one of his most, underrated weapons is his clinch work. It is unbelievable. He has great knees in the clinch. And then I look at the striking, and I go back and I look at the Mateusz Gamrot fight. His striking looked very good, but Mateusz Gamrot doesn't have that great of a striking. I looked at the Tony Ferguson fight. Striking didn't look that great, even though he was winning on the feet. You go back to the Carlos Diego Ferreira fight. Carlos Diego Ferreira landed some big shots on Beneil Dariush. Then you go back to Drakkar Klose fight, almost got finished on the feet by Drakkar Klose. And you take all that and you kind of put it together and you try to make an educated guess. Well, Dariush fights best when he's moving forward. He fights best when he has an offensive wrestling advantage. He's going to have neither of those against Charles Oliveira because Charles Oliveira is going to come out and put the pressure on Dariush. And I think Charles Oliveira has the far superior striking. I think he's much faster. I think he's much more technical. And even if Dariush is able to get Charles Oliveira down, I think Charles Oliveira will be able to force scrambles and he'll be able to get back to his feet. And also, Charles Oliveira's jiu-jitsu is so dangerous, I could see him finding a submission off of his back against Dariush. I don't think that's super likely because Dariush has good jiu-jitsu and he's rapidly improving. And then also, I was looking at Dariush's main strengths. One of his main strengths is his kicks. He has great body kicks and great leg kicks. He will just throw a very heavy leg kick, and it's almost like he's kicking through both legs. Guess who's super light on their feet? Charles Oliveira. He almost has that Muay Thai stance where his lead leg is constantly lifting up. So I don't think Dariush is going to have that weapon either. So I think what's going to happen in this fight is you're going to see Dariush get outclassed on the feet. I think he's going to try to incorporate the grappling. I don't think he's going to have a lot of success. I think he's going to be whiffing on a lot of big shots. Meanwhile, Charles Oliveira, he's coming off a loss. He knows this is a must win. He doesn't want to lose 2 in a row. He's still going to be aggressive, but he's going to be a little bit more technical and not willing to get into a brawl because he has the speed and technical advantage over Dariush. I think the first round is going to be a fun first round. I worry about Charles Oliveira. He's taken a lot of damage. He's got hurt in a lot of fights. I do worry about him walking into a big shot from Beneil Dariush, and then maybe Dariush can control him on the ground for a little bit until Oliveira can work his way back to his feet. But outside of that, I think Oliveira will be landing on the feet. I think he'll be pumping the jab. I think he'll be throwing kicks of his own. And I think when Dariush does initiate the grappling exchanges and look for takedowns, he's going to clinch up. And I think Oliveira is going to be kneeing him to the body, beating him up in the clinch, elbows in the clinch, elbows on the break. And then I think eventually in that second round, You know, as Dariush is already wearing a little bit of damage, it was a competitive first round, but Oliveira took it. I think in that second round, I see Charles Oliveira catching him with a left hook or a straight right down the middle, hurting Beneil Dariush, following him to the ground while Dariush is hurt badly, and locking up a rear naked choke. I want to pick Charles Oliveira by TKO so badly, but what I've seen in Charles Oliveira's fights, he prioritizes the submission. If he hurts you on the ground or he hurts you on the feet and then follows you to the ground, rather than looking for ground and pound and looking for the finish, he immediately starts looking for submissions. Look what he did to Justin Gaethje. He went from like an armbar to a triangle to eventually finding the rear naked choke. And the way he transitions on the ground, the jiu-jitsu is unbelievable. The submission threat is unbelievable. And I just think the striking advantage for Dariush, or the striking advantage for Charles Oliveira, is going to be way too much. I think Dariush, honestly, even though he's massively improving over the years, I think the striking is slow and labored. And I think Oliveira is going to be much faster and much more technical, while Beneil Dariush is kind of throwing these slow looping punches. And I think Oliveira is going to go out there, clip him badly in that second round, follow him to the ground, snatch up the neck, rear naked choke in the second round. I'm going to say late second round rear naked choke for Charles Oliveira. Gets it done over Beneil Dariush. Does he earn a title shot with this? Because there's a lot of talk. If Beneil Dariush wins this fight, he's next in line for Islam Makhachev. Could Charles Oliveira get that rematch? If he goes out there and puts on the performance that I think he will, I think he'll deserve it more than the winner of Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje at UFC 291. So there's a very good chance that Charles Oliveira could be rematching Islam Makhachev at UFC 294 in Abu Dhabi in October with a win at UFC 289 over Beneil Dariush. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And thank you so much for watching.